365 Sports today with Karels, 247 Sports, covers Texas A&M. He joins me. We traded a text or two back and forth because I always want to make sure how to say a name, with mine being Smoke and it's spelled a little bit unique. And Carter had to let me know. Carter, how many people get that wrong, that it's Karels or not Karels, or how many people can't say it quickly?
I mean, the success rate has to be below 5%. It's always Karels. It's Karels.
Yep.
Hey, it doesn't seem right when it's all spelled out. It shouldn't be Karels, but it is. So yeah. I kind of understand, though.
Well, you do a great job covering A&M. We appreciate your time. Reuben Owens goes down. I know that their overall running back room doesn't seem to be too deep. What's the pecking order now? And secondly, are they in a position where somebody at another position might be an option at running back?
Yeah, pretty thin. You've got 3 scholarship running backs heading into the season as it stands that are healthy, and lasting a whole season, especially in the SEC with 3 guys, you're rolling the dice because you lose one of them, and man, you're kind of in trouble. So, yeah, I think that will be something. We haven't seen it yet, but I think that's something that they'll have to think about, whether it's, hey, let's use a guy in an emergency situation, or hey, let's just get some guys some practice reps at a certain position. And there's certainly a few names you can think about, but right now it's Le'Veon Moss, Jr., who for most of the last season looked like the best running back on the team, but had some injuries that held him back. Amari Daniels actually led the team in rushing last year, started the season pretty well, but kind of faded as it went along, as Moss kind of started to hit his stride, and Owens started to get a couple nice games in there. And then the third guy to know is E.J. Smith, who you've probably heard of a guy named Emmitt Smith before. That is his son, and he comes from Stanford, first-year transfer. And he's a guy who has also had a tough time with injuries in the past, but when healthy, he's been a guy who was good enough to start at Stanford and will certainly push for time at Texas A&M. He's effective as a receiver as well. So, you could see him catching passes. You could see him, in pass, picking up blitzes and pass protection and stuff like that. You could see him in a multitude of ways. But, yeah, really 3 guys right now. I think they wanted this to be a running back by committee approach this season. And so they're going to lean on all 3 of those guys. And you certainly can't afford to lose any more guys.
Now, the way I see it with Reuben Owens, he was the one who had the most potential to be the alpha dog back down the line, if it got to that point. He does everything that both the other guys can do. A couple of these things, he kind of does all those things. So now it's back to being committee strictly without maybe the potential for an alpha dog.
I think even if Owens was healthy, it would have been a committee. Talking to Elko and Klein all offseason, they've heavily hinted at the fact that they would be using a committee approach. It's what they did last year under Jimbo Fisher. All 3 guys, Moss, Owens, and Daniels, had almost the same amount of carries and overall touches. So I think it actually would have still been pretty similar. And you could say 1A, 1B, 1C could have been kind of the deal. Owens, I think he certainly long-term has the potential to be maybe the best guy of the group. But, there were times last year where, he kind of hit that rookie wall, if you will, had some growing pains. I think he has some room to go as far as picking up blitzes and maybe fighting through contact and stuff like that. So I wouldn't say he was going to be the alpha of the group per se, but definitely a big loss, not just because of the potential he had as a former 5-star recruit, but also just the depth and what that does to a group where they want to use, multiple guys. So definitely a big loss, but not like they're losing, a Doak Walker Award finalist or anything like that.
So, all right, with Mike Elko, the coach, and what he likes to do, yes, they're going to throw it around. They need to do that as well. But is this just it's never a good year to lose your star running back and then others too, but is this a bad year because of how he likes to play or what?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that traditionally when you've watched a Colin Klein offense, they like to run the football. They like to use multiple tight ends. They like to involve multiple rushers if they can. Obviously, at Kansas State, Deuce Vaughn was the guy getting a lot of the carries, but their quarterback ran quite a bit. So you look at their rushing attack the last couple of years; they were one of the best in the country. And I don't know if A&M had the personnel that K-State did to do quite that, but there did seem to be an emphasis on wanting to run the ball, being more of that methodical offense. I think their limitations at the skill position would probably make them want to be more of that move the chains, be efficient on third down, stay ahead of the chains on first and second down kind of thing, instead of being that, wide open, spread them out, high flying offense. So it does hurt because I think, if you're going to emphasize the run game, if you're going to give 100 carries to 3 different guys, that's a big chunk of production you're just taking out. And you really are, putting a lot on Le'Veon Moss and E.J. Smith, 2 guys who have had injury problems in the past. You're putting a lot on them as far as staying healthy. And, again, it's a long season. You're going to be banged up and bruised. So maybe a committee approach will help them remain fresh for most of the season. But again, yeah, you're one injury away from being kind of a really tough spot there.
Are any of the freshmen that they have coming in likely to maybe see some more time because of this?
Well, they actually did not sign any running backs in the 2024 class. They only just brought in the one transfer, E.J. Smith. So, only 3 scholarship running backs. But certainly there's a couple guys that you could look at. Terry Bussey's one of them. He was the 5-star athlete out of Timpson, who is kind of your do-it-all guy. I mean, some people think he could be a cornerback. Some people think that he could be a receiver, maybe even running back. And so he might be a guy that you say, hey, we don't long-term think you're going to be a running back, but this is the place that is needed the most. So, yeah, let's give you some practice reps there. Could definitely see that. He's someone who is dynamic with the ball in his hands. Based on what I heard from the scrimmage that they had this last Saturday, was that this guy, first scrimmage ever on the team, runs back the opening kickoff for a touchdown. So this is somebody that you give him the ball, he can do stuff with it. And I know he's a young freshman, and maybe he's not someone you put in there right away, but I think maybe you think about giving him some practice reps in case you are needed down the line. And, Notre Dame coming up as the first opponent, I don't think you throw someone into a situation like that. But the next week they play McNeese State, and maybe that's a game where you kind of test out some things and okay, yeah, let's give you a couple reps in the third or fourth quarter when it's a blowout. So I would say that he's the one to watch because he can play a lot of different positions for you. And I don't think at corner, if he were to be there this year, I don't think he would see much time.
Terry Bussey, and you may not know this, Carter, because you covered before you with A&M. Weren't you covering Florida State? Is that right?
I was, yes.
Such
but I have a high school website
job
that has been covering East Texas for a long time, 40 years or so. The website for about 20. Terry Bussey was my back-to-back all East Texas, what I call alpha dog. I mean, like the guy that at Timpson High School, and there's a lot of guys that come out of East Texas like that have done that. And I don't see him anywhere really on the depth chart, but he is dynamic, and one of those things where he could do so many things that you wonder if he can do one thing well, but he can, and that's a great option. I forgot about Terry Bussey is at least an option for this year, and who knows, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at a guy like that and you think, hey, could this be a Travis Hunter kind of guy where one day he's playing both ways? Or, maybe it just depends on what the need is. If it's, hey, you don't have any corners, okay, put him at corner. Hey, you don't have any running backs, okay, put him there. And I think that's kind of what's going on in the mind of this coaching staff right now, I would figure, is, hey, cornerback, they just brought in a ton of transfers, and it sounded like cornerback was the position they really liked him at long term, but he's not in the two deep there. So you kind of have to move around and think about, okay, well, at receiver, do you have enough guys there? They kind of, I think they feel good about their top 5 or 6, but after that, you might want to fortify that depth, and then at running back certainly. As well. But yeah, we got a chance to watch him yesterday at practice returning kicks, and just a natural as far as his feel for, blockers and his vision and his ability to cut back, and just a really great athlete with the ball in his hand. So I think you got to think about it.
All right. So we know why there's a transition at head coach, because it didn't work out with Jimbo, despite that, 2020 team, they were pretty darn good during COVID. Yeah. In your opinion, what are the expectations inside the SEC with even 2 new schools, including A&M, now with their rival with Texas and Oklahoma? What do you think is a successful year for them, or what would be a successful year for them?
Yeah, I think traditionally you look at Texas A&M, and over the last 20 years, it's been a team that hasn't had many 10-win seasons, many 9-win seasons. There's been a lot of 8-4s. There's been a lot of 7-5. So I think if you can come in here year one and go 9-3, I think you could really sell that, hey, this is not a rebuild, and this team is poised to crack into the playoff if you can go 9-3. I don't think 9-3 gets you into the playoff, but it can tell everybody that, hey, this is a team that could contend for a spot in there. A&M fans, they certainly have super high expectations with the amount of money and resources they have. So they may tell you it's playoff or bust with a team that can recruit at a high level like this. But I do think that there is pressure on Mike Elko to win at a pretty high level year one, just because of a couple things. You don't fire Jimbo Fisher and pay him that buyout money to just go 7-6, mm-hmm. right? You don't do that just to be right where you were. And so you got to show that you can be better than, they were last year, number one. And then number two, this is a highly favorable schedule compared to most years in the SEC for A&M, because, they don't have to play Georgia. They don't have to play Bama. Ole Miss is going to be one of the top teams in the SEC this year, in the country this year. They don't have to play them. And their 4 biggest games, LSU, Missouri, Texas, and Notre Dame, are all at home this year. And so you kind of look at the schedule and you say, man, this just really plays out favorably. You get 2 bye weeks. Some years you only get 1. And so I think it actually plays out in their favor a little bit. They also have quite a bit of juniors and seniors on this team. It's a more experienced group, a healthier group outside of the Owens deal. I mean, if you look at their past teams over the last couple of years, preseason camp, I mean, it was a nightmare. They had a lot of guys out with injuries and stuff. So I think they're in a more favorable position to win, and that's why there's more pressure to, hey, this is not a rebuild year. This is not a 7-6 kind of thing. It's got to be 9-3, and hey, contending for a college football playoff spot.
Carter, thank you, man. Paul, anything else?
No, I just wanted to ask about the quarterback depth. I know that Connor Wegman's health is, the biggest thing that they want to keep, but last year did kind of show that they might have one of the better quarterback depth charts in the SEC, if not the country, because Jalen Henderson availed himself pretty well when he was healthy. And, Marcel Reed kind of thrown in the bowl game late, really played kind of well in that game once he kind of got his sea legs. So are they, can they withstand an injury to Connor Wigman if it's just a couple weeks?
Well, you definitely don't want to see your starter go down regardless. This guy does have a lot of hype from certain people. Some ESPN, Matt Miller thinks he'll be a first-round pick next year. Now, I'm not that high on him, but it would be a loss, no doubt about it. But, yes, you're totally right that these two backup quarterbacks, a lot of teams in the country would be fortunate to have. Jalen Henderson last year put up 50 points. I know it's Mississippi State. They weren't very good, but 50-plus points on any SEC team, if you're a backup quarterback, and especially with what the situation he entered himself into. I mean, that was a team that was just over with that season and not, not in a good place. And so to put up that amount of points and do what he did, I thought was impressive. Same with his performance against LSU. Put almost 30, 40 points up on them on the road. And yeah, Marcel Reed, what he did in the bowl game, what he did in the spring game, he was only a true freshman last year. And I think that was kind of one of the bigger surprises on the positive side last year is, no one knew how good either of those guys were going into the season because Jalen Henderson had played like 20 snaps in his career at Fresno State, and Marcel Reed was a true freshman who, was on the skinnier side and was kind of thought to be, a guy who would be maybe more of a project. But hey, they came in right away and showed some positive stuff. So, yeah, I think you could argue that collectively this quarterback room is in great shape. And while you wouldn't want to see Wigman go down, it wouldn't be as catastrophic as it's been over the last few years where, 2020 and 2021, you had your quarterback go down and it was a disaster for this team. So, yeah, I think they could be in okay shape, but certainly don't want to see Wigman go down as well.
Carter, thank you very much. We'll be in touch again. Karels from Texas A&M, covers Texas A&M, for 247 Sports. We appreciate his time.